ahead and took off.
All of these races are available about 30 minutes after the race finishes on a DVD. You can pick up yours at the merchandise tent. They're only $15, and I think that you've seen from the Jumbotron the outstanding camera work that has gone on throughout the race here. An outstanding souvenir of the 40th annual San Diego Crew Classic. Pick up your DVD of any race that you'd like to mention at the merchandise tent. And these races and the DVDs are available about 30 minutes after the race is completed. We are getting ready for event number 88. It is the Women's Collegiate Lightweight Grand Final. And the crews in this particular race
2 minutes
will be competing in this Grand Final for the Women's Collegiate Lightweight.
Event number 88, Women's Collegiate Lightweight 8 Grand Final. Lane 1, Stanford University A crew. Lane 2, Princeton University. Lane 3, Stanford University B. Lane 4, Washington State University. The wind has completely died, as I believe the wind is going to transition to the west momentarily, but right now it's absolutely calm down here at the starting area. None of the crews are having to scull their bows up at all. It's placid water. The starter's about ready to pull the crews, and we'll get underway. Race number 88.
Stanford University A, Princeton University, Stanford University B, Washington State University. Attention, go.
That's the start of race number 88, Women's Collegiate Lightweight 8 Grand Final. All crews away without incident. Looks like it's going to be quite a battle between lanes 1 and 2. Right now, Princeton, the Tigers, in lane 2 with a slight advantage over Stanford A. It appears there's going to be quite a battle for the next 2 between Washington State in lane 4 and Stanford B crew. They're bow ball to bow ball. But right now, as we approach 250 meters, it's Princeton, your race leader, by 2 seats over the Stanford A crew in lane 1. I can feel the wind now shifting out of the west as it starts to cross from the port side now, as the crews get into their rhythm. Princeton now really working on those finishes, trying to extend a slight lead that they have over Stanford. So Princeton University in lane 2 with a slight advantage over Stanford A crew in lane 1. And then the Stanford B crew holds down that 3rd position while Washington State is in 4th. I can see now an exertion of power as the women sit up on the Stanford A crew, battling their way back in. Right now it's too close to call between the first 2 crews. That would be Princeton in lane 2 and Stanford A in lane 1. Both crews now cross the 500-meter mark, and it looks like Princeton might have a slight advantage over Stanford A. And then it's Stanford B in that 3rd spot, followed by Washington State.
On the water with the Women's Collegiate Lightweight Grand Final, 4 crews in this one. Stanford University in lane number 1 currently battling it out with lane number 2 Princeton for our leadership. In lane number 3 it is the Stanford B crew, and out in lane number 4 Washington State University.
what we have here is probably going to develop into a two-boat races. Stanford University A and Princeton University, they raced each other yesterday. They finished within 2 seconds of each other. So this is going to be a repeat of that dogfight from yesterday. The Stanford B boat were some considerable distance further back, as were the Washington State crew. Washington State are a relatively new addition to the lightweight women's ranks, and are obviously in a development stage, and they were certainly would be expected to be a little bit way back on times based on the heats of yesterday. But what we're seeing is Princeton and Stanford, who are now becoming big rivals in women's lightweight rowing. They've certainly both featured at the Women's Lightweight Championship 8s race at the IRA Championships, and we can expect to see them taking it to each other on this race course here this afternoon. At the moment, it seems to be Stanford who have taken a lead going into the third 500, but Princeton are not letting them get away.
It's a great opportunity for these crews to see each other's speed before the IRA Championships, where they have their championships, which will be in Sacramento this year. It will be interesting to see how they handle, especially Princeton, having had winter conditions, having indoor winter training, while Stanford got to enjoy being on the water for most of the winter. Let's see how this race unfolds. Yes,
we're seeing the procession at the back that we kind of anticipated based on the heat times. In third place, we have the Stanford B boat, and then some way back, we have the Washington State lightweight program. And at the moment, it's the Stanford A boat who are taking advantage of lane 1 and who seem to have just eased themselves a little further ahead of the crew from Princeton in lane 2.
It seems like Stanford's A boat in lane 1 is about a 34-35. If they can just keep that boat moving with this tailwind, they're going to continue just to gain inches on Princeton. And Princeton has a decision to make, and it's a decision time of sitting up, going for it, because they've got nothing to lose.
Stanford A is along the shoreline, and they continue to keep a lead that they took just outside the 500-meter mark in this race, and now we're approaching 500 meters left to go out of our 2,000-meter race, and Stanford continues to hang in there in first place. They are ever so slightly inching away from Princeton, and then we have open water back to the Stanford B and more open water back to the Washington State University crew.
Yes, you can see as they're coming up to the final 500, suddenly the stern of all the boats seem to take a slight hitch to the left as we're looking at them, as they get the full effect of that wind starting to swing around a little to the south-southwest.
Still have somewhat of a trailing breeze, and now Princeton has gotten back into it a little bit. They seem to be tailing off over the last 500 meters, but they have picked it up just a bit and tried to close that gap. Still looks like Stanford has a 5 or 6 seat lead at least as they come down to near 250 meters to go. Lots of open water back to Stanford B boat, and even more all the way back to Washington State. So obviously this is going to be a 2-boat race, and right now Stanford has the best of it.
Princeton still has a shot. They still have contact. They're about closing in on 36, but not yet. Whoever's going to win, they've got to go now.
Well, now Stanford has picked it up and gone long and strong with it, but Princeton is still closing ever so slightly, but they have not been able to overtake and pick up the lead that they had earlier in our race. This is Stanford University's A boat along the shoreline, and they have about a 6-seat lead over the Princeton crew out in lane number 2. Far back to the Stanford B boat, and even farther back to Washington State University. The flashing white blades of Stanford University in their A boat is moving along on the shoreline, and it looks like now they have completely taken it as Princeton has throttled back just a little bit and finished their charge. And right now it appears that Stanford University will be the unofficial winner of the Women's Collegiate Lightweight Grand Final, with Princeton finishing second. And even though they are still on the water, Stanford B boat apparently will finish third, and then comes Washington State University.
Well, I would think, Mary, that Princeton would be quite heartened by that result. They may not have won it, but given their limited amount of time on the water, I think that they'd feel pretty confident that later in the season they can overturn that result.
Absolutely. You know, if they're going to go back home and in any type of training piece, that coxswain's going to say, calling seats off of Stanford, we need more. We need to gain up ground for the IRA final.
We've got event number 89 set to go, the men's collegiate lightweight grand final, and that will be getting underway here shortly. We'd like to check and see if you enjoy craft beer and good food. Well, then check out the San Diego Brew Classic, which takes place right here from 1 until 5 o'clock this afternoon at Crown Point. Tickets are $25 at the gate for general admission, which includes 10 4-ounce tasters. That is the San Diego Brew Classic starting this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And the men's collegiate lightweight grand final set to go. And this will be crews competing for the Secretary of the Navy Cup. Thanks to our partners, the San Diego Zoo and Safari Park, for their continued support of the Crew Classic. Don't forget to swing by the San Diego Zoo Family Festival area and check out the local artist and kid crews. So Sporty is a proud sponsor of the San Diego Crew Classic Brunch on the Bay and wishes to thank all the volunteers to make this event possible. So Sporty has been making rowing apparel since 1987, and they're committed to quality products at affordable prices. Stop by their tent. They want to hear what you have to say about their fine fashions. Lily Esmo is a proud sponsor of the San Diego Crew Classic. Make sure that you try one of their great coffee products right here on the grounds of the San Diego Crew Classic.